Hey everybody, welcome back to the Learn Workplace Climate Action Ask Me Anything series. Today's speaker expert will probably not need an introduction, but we'll do one anyways. Aiyana Bodi, one of the resident subject matter experts right here in the channel, along with myself. Please introduce yourself and tell us what we're going to be talking about today in this week's AMA.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. I'm Aiyana Bodi, as Drew said, and I help manage our private sector engagement program at Project Drawdown, which is a climate solutions focused organization. We have a team of super smart scientists, people who will be way smarter than I will ever be, working to research climate solutions. But my role is to help get those climate solutions out into the world, specifically into businesses. And kind of double clicking into that, I'm really focused on helping employees within businesses, specifically non-sustainability employees, take action in their roles to be internal climate change makers at their organizations. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us, both in this short AMA video, but also in the channel every week and all the time. So let's zoom out a little bit because you talked about how your role is to, leverage the climate science that your organization is well known for and funneling that into the private sector, into the business community. Let's zoom out a little bit and help frame that for people. What is the role of the private sector in both causing climate change, but also what's the opportunity of harnessing the power of businesses to actually create meaningful climate solutions?
Yeah, I think I love this question because I think it is really important to acknowledge both how companies have helped contribute to the climate crisis, but also acknowledge the opportunity and benefit that they can get from actually caring about sustainability. I guess the first thing I'll say is that I think this is something we all know, but just to put it out there and remind us of how much influence that the private sector truly has in our world, how much financial power they have, political power and social and cultural power they have. Of the 100 biggest economies in the world, 69 of them are corporations. So
Wow.
the majority of the biggest economies in the world aren't even countries or nations, they're companies, which can sound very alarming, at least it does to me. So obviously you can imagine the effect that that has on our atmosphere. Over 70% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from just 100 energy companies. I think like just the fashion industry contributes up to 10% of global emissions. So again, there's just a lot of proof out there that the private sector has really been a main driver of the climate crisis. But because of that, I do like to kind of flip it into something more positive. I think because they've had such an influence causing climate change, that also means they have such an opportunity to help get us
Mhm.
out of this problem because of that influence that they have. And the fact is that businesses just do better when they actually care about sustainability, especially when they engage their workforce on sustainability. So when companies care about climate, it's really good for employee retention and attraction. Employees tend to be more motivated and loyal when their companies care about the environment. And you can imagine this is good for things like employee morale, innovation, etc. There's also, proof out there that companies do better, like when it comes to their actual profit and revenue when they care about sustainability as well. And again, this is because companies that care about climate are doing things like upskilling their employees. They're providing their employees with more opportunities to kind of align their values with their work. And like I said earlier, all of this is really good for innovation, which can lead to more revenue in the long term. So yeah, companies have done a number on our climate, but I think it's really important to acknowledge that because of their influence, they actually have a lot of power to help us get us out of this mess.
For sure. I often think about how much, as you said, political, economic, social, cultural power that organizations, especially large corporations, have and influence in the way that our world works. And if we can funnel some of that even into climate solutions, the opportunity is huge. So let's talk a little bit about what is the current state of corporate sustainability, right? If we're finally at a moment where a lot of companies are recognizing that they've had a detrimental impact on the environment, what have they been doing about it? Where are we at in this moment? Help people understand that kind of timeline and where we really are right now.
Well, I'll say first that it's not great news.
Dang it.
But yeah, I would say, I think in the past, I would say like 5 to 10 years ago, it was very much about net zero. And a lot of companies have net zero by 2040 or 2050 goals, which I think a lot of us can agree is not really a leading position anymore, especially now that we kind of understand the implications that come along with net zero and how it's so easy to kind of get out of like actually reducing emissions. So that's like one trend I'll mention. I think we're moving a lot more into away from goal setting and more into accounting and reporting, which is good, right? It's kind of the next natural step to kind of get your house in order and figure out what you actually need to do to lower emissions. There's like a lot more mandatory regulations, especially in the EU, not so much here in the States. And all that is good, but the flip side to that is that sustainability teams are still super underfunded. So now that they have like all of this work to do when it comes to accounting and reporting, they're actually not really able to spend much time on actually implementing actions that reduce emissions, at least not at the scale that we really need to see it happen. If there was an IBM report that said spending on sustainability reporting exceeds actual like implementation and innovation by 40% or 45%, which is crazy. So yeah, overall, sustainability teams have more work to do, but they have fewer resources to do that new work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we're also seeing, again, I can mostly speak from a US perspective, but the political landscape is obviously not super conducive to corporate climate action. And I think you're seeing that in, like CEO engagement on climate is definitely dropping, which means that it's, lowering in priority and in budget in companies. So that's kind of all the bad news, but the good news is that, and I know you have seen this too, is that I think the bottom up pressure is definitely growing. And I think people who are maybe not in leadership positions are really taking an interest in sustainability and climate and starting to step up and kind of be more of those like role level implementers of sustainability. So I think that's a bright spot where overall the state of corporate sustainability is not great, but the bright spot is that kind of the bottom up pressure, I think, is growing. So I'm hoping that pressure can kind of translate into leadership decisions as well.
Let's close out by talking about the ways that businesses in particular can uniquely address climate change, right? Help me distinguish from what I can do compared to what businesses can uniquely do to meaningfully address climate change.
Mhm. At Project Drawdown, we kind of talk about like different levers of influence that companies have on the climate, and those are broadly kind of around reducing emissions, engaging stakeholders. So stakeholders meaning employees, customers, board of directors, communities, etc. Thinking about their products, partnerships, and procurement. So again, thinking about the physical things that they're actually making. Can they make them more circular or sustainable? But also thinking about the partners that they work with. So advertisers is a company working with an advertising agency that's kind of turning around and then also working with oil and gas clients. Um, Thinking about a company's investments and financing, right? Are they offering climate-friendly retirement plans to their employees, or are their retirement plans invested in oil and gas? Turns out most retirement plans are invested in oil and gas. Policy advocacy. Are they a part of a trade association that, again, is turning around and lobbying against climate policy? And then I would say more broadly, just kind of how are they thinking about their business model in terms of climate solutions? Is it in service of climate solutions or is it not? And that's a much bigger question. But just to kind of sum it up, businesses have a lot of influence, and I think there's a lot of influence that they have that they don't really realize that they have can be used for climate and sustainability. And the role of employees and other actors is to get companies to care about climate in a way that goes beyond kind of just that, let's reduce waste, let's reduce water usage, and really think more broadly about what is our place in society and the influence that we actually have.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much for the short interview. And for any questions that the community has, we'll see you in the Slack channel.